Welcome to the Mouse Bytes podcast. Here we go.
Hello and welcome to Mouse Bytes, the show all about Disney video games past and present. I'm your host Clay, and today I'm joined by my co-host Jeph. How's it going, dude?
Good. How you doing, man?
Good. Back to the grindstone with this show, man. We're kind of we did episode 5 recently, and now we're trying to do episodes on a more regular basis, and so I'm so stoked that we're hitting number 6 at a much quicker rate. So I'm excited. I'm excited for us to get into the double digits.
Same. Yeah, no, it's good to kind of be doing this on a more consistent basis and so close. I think it's just been 2 weeks since our last recording, so it doesn't feel too alien. It's
right.
It's familiar, which is good because we waited a couple months between the last ones. So good to be back.
Awesome. Well, you were a gentleman once again and allowed me to pick this week's game that we're going to be covering and reviewing. And so this is one that I've been wanting to do from the beginning. And so, so we're going to jump right into it. Guys, today we are looking at Pinocchio. All right, now to start us off, most of you listeners probably know who Pinocchio is. He's a pretty popular guy, and his name is kind of hard to spell. I noticed. I was searching his name a lot today, and I kept spelling it wrong.
Yeah, I always put 2 N's instead of 2 C's.
Right? Yeah, that just feels so much more right. But Pinocchio. And anyway, so to get started, since you know who Pinocchio is, like, what the heck is this game? And so Jeph is going to explain to you guys kind of what the general gist of this game is.
Yeah, so this is a 2D platformer game. Came out on the Genesis, Mega Drive, the Super Nintendo, and it even came out on the Game Boy, which I believe you've actually played that one. I didn't get a chance to play that one this week.
Yeah, I just messed around with it for a little bit, and then I didn't spend most of my time in it, but I was like, oh, there's a Game Boy version. I should look into it. And it was really rough on the eyes. It was literally just a bunch of pixels thrown in, and I respected that they were trying to, literally take the console version and turn it into a handheld version, but it was rough. But yeah, I messed with it for a little bit, and so I at least have a little bit of an idea. But I would stay away from that version personally.
Interesting.
So.
Yeah, at the time, it was especially common for side-scroller type games to just kind of be ported to the Game Boy rather than custom built, and
right. I
think a lot of them suffer for it. It was rare that you got one that was as good as or worked as well, because of this. Really, the screen size is what it came down to. The resolution was just too small to convey what you would normally see on a TV screen, and the limited width of the screen, because I think the Game Boy had a interesting aspect ratio, or was a little more narrow even than like the Super Nintendo, which is already more narrow than the Genesis. So if you have a game that's optimized for the Genesis, it especially didn't convert well to Game Boy. Continuing on with what the heck this game is, it was released in, I think, October of 1996.
October.
Yeah. In North America, the European Union, it just says 1996 here, so I don't know if it was a simul release or just a similar time frame, but pretty late in the Super Nintendo's life cycle, like pretty much a month after the N64 launched in North America, almost a year after it launched in Japan. What else? I mean, Donkey Kong Country 3 came out around that time. There wasn't very many more Super Nintendo games after that point.
Right.
But that said, we'll jump into this. I think it is one of the better looking and sounding games on the Super Nintendo, which is the one I played. And we compared it and saw it on the Genesis, and it wasn't quite as good in my opinion. We'll get into that again as we go through each section, but yeah, it was developed by Virgin Interactive, who did a lot of the Disney games of the mid-90s, like the Lion Kings and stuff, and animation provided by Disney Feature Animation. I counted 18 different animators in the credits, so...
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean...
It definitely shows.
Yeah.
So this game didn't release, at the same time as the movie did then?
No, it was a little
Shocking.
bit later than that. Yeah, I don't know why they didn't put it out.
Do you know how much? Yeah, they should just release it in 1940 when the movie came out.
56 years later, it's not too bad.
Yeah, I mean, they were pretty close.
Yeah.
So.
They say that the longer you leave it in development, the better the end product. So, 56 years of polish, it's, not unlike a Rockstar game today.
Dude, I was just about to say that.
Classic.
Good
All right,
stuff.
so speaking of 1996 and that time frame, did you have any history with the game or any nostalgic feelings with it?
Dude, I do actually. Oddly enough, I don't know what year I first played this. I don't know. Obviously, it had to have been after 96. So we were still playing our Super Nintendo at this point. So this must have been probably between the time that, this game came out when we got our N64, which would have been like, I think Christmas 97 or something. I don't know.
That's when I got mine.
Okay. I'm pretty sure that's when it was. But the interesting thing about this one, if you think this is interesting, I do. I remember we rented this game from Blockbuster, which isn't really that interesting, but for us it was, because we didn't really rent a lot of video games from Blockbuster. It wasn't really something my parents did a whole lot for us or with us, but for some reason I just remember we did. And I remember playing it with my two brothers, and I think my mom was even like sitting there with us, which is kind of a weird thing too. And I remember playing this with them, and I remember specifically the first level. I don't know why, but there's this one part in the level where you're up on these roofs, and there's like these shingles that fall through, and then you can drop down into that. And I remember, this is like the only memory I have when we were playing it, but we like could not figure out where to go. And if you play it on a higher difficulty, you have to drop down through a roof, through the shingle hole to move on to the next part. And I remember going, maybe we need to drop down there. And like one of my siblings was like, nah, dude, that's stupid. Like, that's not what the game wants us to do. And finally we like tried it, and I was right. And I was like, told
it's
you.
The best feeling.
Yeah, right. And you're just like, shut up, brother. You're wrong. Like, so I don't know, just super random thought or memory. And so that was the first time we played it. Then I think we ended up returning it, obviously, because we rented it. And then years later, I'd go back and play it a little bit, and I just would play it on an emulator or whatnot. And so eventually, I don't know how long ago it's been now, a few years ago, I did finally hunt down a copy, a physical copy for the Super Nintendo, which is what we rented from Blockbuster. And so now I own it, and happy to have it sitting on my shelf. So
excellent.
Yeah. What about you?
Unfortunately, I didn't even know this game existed until you suggested it for this show. So I'm sadly missed out completely on it. I think I've mentioned before, I didn't really have a lot of the 2D Disney games, for whatever reason, which is weird because like my family, I think I mentioned before, like my family's like a super Disney family. We had all the VHSs, and like my dad used to work at Epcot when it opened, and we deeply vested in Disney, but for whatever reason never got the Disney video games. So I unfortunately missed out when it first came out, but I did enjoy it. I played through it this last week, and I'm really sad I missed out on it. I think this is one that I would have probably poured a lot of time into if I'd had it back then, especially in that year between 96 and 97 when I didn't have an N64 and all my friends did. I probably would have played the heck out of this, like on the higher difficulties and stuff. But, sadly I missed that boat.
Dude, I didn't know your dad worked at Epcot. That's cool.
Yeah, he was an opening day manager for entertainment.
Huh. Very cool. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Runs in the family, I guess.
Indeed.
Nice. Are you gonna make your kids work at Disney even if they don't want to one day?
Yeah. My wife and I both worked there, so it's
Right.
kind of, especially.
Like, I
in the
don't
blood
want to
now.
work there, Dad. Like, no, you have
work
to.
there and you're gonna like it.
You have to spend at least a year there.
You have to
It'll
pay your
shape you
dues.
into a man. That's right. Pay your dues.
Some people send their kids to boarding school. Some people send them into the military. We'll send them into the Disney college program.
Oh, that's awesome. Good stuff. I wish I could
Indeed.
go into that program, but
That was fun. It's never too late.
all right.
You're an
It's never
enrolled
too
student.
late.
You totally could.
That's true.
You absolutely can. We
Don't
had a
give me any. My
50
wife.
5-year-old lady in our program, and her
Really?
daughter. Yeah, and her daughter was like
Wow.
18, and they did it together. It was really cute.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah,
All right. Well, I'm sure they love Pinocchio, so let's keep this moving for them. All right, guys. Well, we kind of hit some of the intro stuff, so now we're going to jump deep into this game. And so we are going to move on and start into our gameplay discussion. All right, now is the time in the show where we talk about the visuals, audio, gameplay, story, levels, everything. We're going to really jump in, talk about what we thought, what we saw, what we heard, everything, and just, kind of rip this game apart and let you know what we think about it. So starting off is the visual aspect of this game. And Jeph, I know you hit a little bit on it just earlier, but why don't you share with the folks at home what you thought about the visuals of this game?
I think just to sum it up, right off the bat, it looks really good in my opinion, and very closely resembles the original work. The character sprites especially are very accurate. The level backgrounds all look really good. Some of them look closer to the movie than others, in my opinion. And it's sort of just because some of the levels are not directly taken from any aspect of the movie, but just sort of resemble. Like, for example, the opening level, you're walking through Pinocchio's town, and it looks pretty darn similar to when he's going to school in the opening bit of the movie. Whereas a little bit later, towards like Pleasure Island, there's a part where you're climbing some rocks, and I don't really recall any rocks that looked exactly like that. They sort of resemble when the little donkey boys are scared of the, I don't know what the child snatcher catcher guy is, but there's stuff like that. The under the sea part, in my opinion, didn't quite look like the movie. And other things like inside of Monster the Whale, like it's just a whale's back of his throat the whole time. There wasn't much to it, and I don't know that. Really, in the movie, I'm trying to even remember that scene. There's not a whole lot going on there, so some creative liberties were taken.
Yeah, but even still, I would still say that the levels still stick pretty close to the movie, even if it's not maybe like visually, one for one. At least the theme
is there. Yeah.
Right.
No, that's
so
true.
I appreciated that. It didn't feel.
Definitely.
I agree. Like the stones and like that felt a little like out of place. Like that
it felt
part,
like the Lion King to me. Like the Disney
dude,
Lion
it's
King
totally
game.
a Lion King.
So
part, like,
nothing wrong with that. It's just it was like, well, this was maybe, but I mean, it still fit in just fine. And like there's a roller coaster level that looks great, but obviously is not a scene from the
That's
movie.
right.
So
yeah.
It's totally fine. I think it's great that they were bold enough to create new areas and assets and stuff, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about animations or moving backgrounds, things like that?
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, one of the strongest points is just, I think they completely nailed the way Pinocchio walks.
Yeah.
And the way he was animated to walk in the movies, where he's just got this pep in his step and he's real excited. And dude, it's super fluid. And like most of these games where we're talking about, just the sprites on it look so good. And I
love his attack animation.
Oh yeah. Where he kind of spins his whole
head
body.
Stays stationary and he spins.
Yep.
It's super smooth. So cool.
Yeah, and so I mean, yeah, they freaking nailed it. And I think that's definitely one of the strongest points. And the way he controls, I know we're not really talking about that part, but I think it all fits really well. It feels like you're controlling a little wooden boy, and yeah, I think they nailed it. A lot of the supporting characters have really great animations too. The backgrounds are super cool and really detailed, and there's multiple layers. So depending on what level, you've got foreground and background stuff. Like in the first level, you have these like street lamps that are like that go in front in the foreground, and they're the level with Jiminy Cricket when you're out front of Stromboli?
Stromboli's, yeah, yep,
yeah. The whole background in that level is just like freaking beautiful because you can see like the stage production going on, and I'm trying to remember what else was in the background.
I mean, the moon is up top and it's scrolling behind a tree. The thing is all of this comes with an asterisk because this is specific to the Super Nintendo version. The Genesis version has the same backgrounds, but some of them are just solid, so where there would be like 2 or 3 layers in like the Stromboli one, where what's beyond the entrance scrolls separately. Everything in the Genesis one is just a single background image, and no moon.
Yeah.
And no foreground images in the first one, so kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, we watched a video, and I played a little bit of the Genesis one, and normally sometimes I prefer the Genesis versions of these Disney games, and this is just not one of them. There's a lot of graphical moments and the music too, and I know we're not onto the music part, but I just did not like the Genesis version of the music.
No,
and so
very synthy.
Yeah, it didn't fit. Whereas I felt like the Super Nintendo one, the instruments they picked, it just fit so much better. And yeah, I grew up on the Super Nintendo one, so maybe that's just where all my preferences come from. But I don't know. It's just, but back to the visual part, I think that they really nailed it, and it definitely feels like the movie. A lot of the stuff, just the overall art style, I think they really got it, and the enemies and stuff are fine. I don't know that obviously there's some characters from the movie, and then they've added some other characters or whatnot, which is fine. So 2 thumbs up as far as visuals go for me.
Totally. Same here. And just one more comment kind of on the Genesis Super Nintendo comparison is some of the levels, there's different color palettes. It really stands out to me in like the roller coaster level. The wood is like an almost completely different shade, and like the danger signs at the very end are completely different, and they're actually easier to read on the Genesis version. The Super Nintendo one in general, to me, looks a little more washed out than the Genesis one. I think the Genesis used more, like deeper blacks.
It's like way more saturated, is how I would call it, because it's like, but I don't know. I don't think I like it. I don't like the Genesis, like how dark everything is.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like the Super Nintendo one looks painted, whereas the Genesis one kind of doesn't. Like, I mean, it does. Like, it's the same assets most of the time, but the gradients are not as well defined because of the lower color. Like the Genesis just can't display as many colors as the Super Nintendo, and that comes across in a lot of the artwork, in my opinion. You just get some less than stellar blends and gradients on, say, like woodwork or the sky, and it can detract a little bit. Also, there's like no clouds in the sky in a lot of the levels for the Genesis where there is in the Super Nintendo. And I don't know if it's just that when they tried to do it, they just looked too pixelated or what, because it's not like they needed to be on a separate plane. They could have been in the sky, but yeah. And then like again on the roller coaster level, it's much darker, like it's closer to nighttime, whereas it's more like twilight in the Super Nintendo one. And a couple of levels are like that. And I'm not really sure why, if that just comes from the color palette limitations and the amount of shades of blue they could pick from had to match like certain ones already in use in the level. Like, I mean, who knows? But that was pretty common back then. So, little minor differences like on the UI, I guess we can just really quickly discuss the UI in the upper left corner. I think is your health. I played on easy, which you can't take damage, I don't think, because I never died.
You just get hit like a bajillion times before you like notice it. Yeah.
I died on like the roller coaster level because if you miss a jump, you're dead. But like any level with action platforming, I got hit tons and never died. So yeah, you pick up little magic wands, I guess, to replenish that. Then there's hats, which I don't know what those do, and then there's books, which I think are your lives.
Correct. Yeah, if you get so many hats collected, then you get more lives.
Okay. And
yeah, it's
really,
not just one hat per life, but
yeah. Okay. And one really, really odd just discrepancy is that the life counter in the upper right corner, they both use the same icon of Pinocchio's head, but they use completely different fonts for the numbers. And like the Genesis one has a 0, like 05, and then the Super Nintendo one just has the number 5 or the number 4.
Weird.
It's just a really random, like, why was that even a thing?
Yeah, right.
So anyway, just little things. Other than that, not too much UI in the way. No character projectiles that you throw or collect. So it's pretty basic. You jump and you spin, and pretty much it.
Well, do you want to talk about the aspect ratio thing, or do you want to save that for the roller coaster level?
No, we should probably mention it just in general, because I touched on it earlier in the when talking about the Game Boy one. But so the Genesis. What was that?
I didn't say anything.
Oh, weird. Skype just glitched on me.
You're good.
No, so the Genesis one has a wider resolution, and this is the same for a lot of these games that were developed for both systems at the same time. And so certain levels, specifically the roller coaster one and then the last one when you're on a raft, it's a little bit easier to see what's coming when you're doing these pretty fast-paced levels where you kind of need to have twitch reflexes to jump or duck for both levels. And on the Super Nintendo one, the aspect ratio is so much more narrow because of however it displays pixels in a more square. And it makes it really hard to learn the level. You pretty much just trial and error. You go until you die, and then you say, okay, I gotta jump, gotta duck, gotta jump, gotta duck. Like, you can't just play the level. I don't think anyone could just play that level blind the first time and get through it.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, it's unfortunate, and it's definitely one plus, I think, to the Genesis version is you get a little more real estate, and there's definitely some levels in this game where it's welcome and probably very helpful. So
yeah.
So yeah, it was kind of disappointing, but yeah, literally once you got to some of those levels, you're like, I wonder if this is also on the Genesis, because I feel like you can't see it. Like, we don't know which version was made first or whatnot.
But
so maybe they made the Genesis and then chopped it down and made the Super Nintendo. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, or visually it would suggest that they made the Super Nintendo version first.
Yeah, I think at the time it was common to make the Genesis version first because of the lowest common denominator. It was a little bit of a slower system, couldn't display as many colors. So I would assume they kind of targeted that and then kind of just ported over to the Super Nintendo more often than not. And I feel like I've heard that. I can't really confirm that for this game, but it does make sense, especially with these fast action stages where you need reflexes of a ninja.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything else with the visuals that you noted or wanted to discuss?
No, I think that's about it, man. So, next we can talk about the audio. I personally think that the music in this game is pretty good.
Yeah.
They didn't do the thing where the theme song is from the movie and then all the other music is stuff they made up that they thought sounded like it was from the movie.
Right.
But like most of these songs, if not all of them, are lifted from Pinocchio, which is awesome because I wouldn't really even consider Pinocchio to be like a musical.
Right.
Obviously, it does have some singing in it, but they still I think they just nailed it with the music and totally made it feel like, oh, you're watching the movie. You get to the puppet level and you got, No Strings on Me. I don't know. Maybe this is. Would you consider Pinocchio to be a musical?
I would not, and it's funny because you just mentioned No Strings on Me. Like, I wouldn't have even thought of that song unless you said it. The only song I associate with this movie is When You Wish Upon a Star. Yeah.
Right.
I still, even so, would not consider it a musical. There isn't really any exposition through song, which is, in my opinion, what makes a musical a musical. A song in the movie where he's literally in a puppet show singing is more like that's just him in a puppet show singing. Like, we're not learning anything about his character except that he's clumsy. which whatever. It's
Right.
So yeah, it's back to the music itself in the game. Like I really love it. I agree with you that it's great to hear music from the movie and not just some kind of I don't ever want to say third-rate new compositions, because there are some good ones and some of the other ones we've played, but like
Totally.
I think the nostalgia factor helps, or it helps the nostalgia factor when you have the music that you associate with the movie rather than just the visuals. Kind of completes the package. And again, the Super Nintendo one, I think we both agree, is the better sounding one. It has better instrument samples and all that. The Genesis one just is very synthy sounding.
Right.
Which I feel like a lot of people say that the Genesis has a better sound chip. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think some people would say that.
I think it was more capable.
Most of the time I would agree. Like I do really like the different sounds that Genesis has, but this is just not one of them.
Right,
So.
yeah. It's like I feel like they just chose the wrong samples for the instruments. And they're a little shrill
Totally.
and a little just too digitally, if that sounds right.
Yeah.
But whereas, the Super Nintendo one kind of has that almost, I don't want to say cliche, but very commonly used horn samples, especially in the Disney games.
Right.
But they're used well and they work well and they fit the melodies. So
Yeah.
not a whole lot beyond that. I think there are some original tracks from, like, especially the levels that come from things that are not in the movie.
Yeah,
the
Pleasure
Mine Cart
Island, I'm
and
pretty
Pleasure
sure.
Island,
Yeah.
So it's a nice mix and it's very well done.
Yeah.
And
I'm
then-
definitely a fan.
Sound effects and all that stuff seem fine. Nothing really stands out as far as anything that was amazing or, was a great sound effect. I feel like I noticed at the end of I keep bringing this up, but the end of the roller coaster level, Lampwick, the kind of antagonist of the movie, he is lighting off fireworks under Pinocchio and he's up on the rails trying to avoid them. And I feel like in the Super Nintendo they were booming and crackling and stuff, and in the Genesis one they weren't even making sounds.
Huh.
But I don't know if you noticed anything like that, or
I didn't, but I might have
Okay.
just skipped over that part.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting because they definitely got some booming fireworks on the Super Nintendo version. So,
So,
yeah. Some notable things. I guess there's Pinocchio makes like an ouch sound when you get hurt. So that's kind of something. And then there's like a crowd cheering in the puppet show. Those are really the only two things I can think of off the top of my head.
Totally.
Does Monstro make any sounds in this game? I can't remember.
I can't either. I feel like when he's chasing you, maybe he growls or something.
Maybe or his eye opens right next to you.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't
Some
know.
Water
But yeah,
swooshing effects when you're jumping over those little like water typhoons, which I don't really know what those are. Do they? Do you know what I'm talking about when Monster's chasing you on the raft and
they're
every time he
supposed
gets
to
close?
speed you up. Apparently,
Is that what they are? Oh, I was like trying to avoid them and make him eat them.
Yeah, they don't. They're good for you. I
Okay.
didn't notice any difference.
No,
But
I
yeah.
didn't either.
At
But I was
first
playing on
dodging
easy.
them.
So
Right.
full disclosure, I played the game only on easy. I didn't go into the higher difficulty. On the YouTube
we'll talk-
playthrough, yeah, we'll talk on the game.
Actually, we're into game. Next up is gameplay and difficulty. So
let's do it.
So go ahead. Sorry, what were you saying?
Oh, some things I noticed in the YouTube playthrough that we watched, which was on, I think, just the regular difficulty, was some of the added challenge that comes with the normal difficulty, or I guess what the regular challenge is that's removed for the easy difficulty. More enemies in certain locations and enemies that have more actions. So like there's a part with balloons where there's just kind of enemies dangling above you when you're on easy, but in regular they like drop bricks at you, and there's ones on the ground that throw balls that I believe is in the easy difficulty, but
Right.
just added stuff like that. There's like seagulls and stuff that are not in the easy version that just dive bomb you. I noticed
Arrows.
there's arrows that give you hints of when to jump or duck in the levels that require it.
Right. Whereas in the normal and hard, you don't get those.
No, it's figured out.
Yeah.
Which it's not super obvious when to do that right off the bat, because some of the backgrounds they just look like background. You don't realize that they're kind of interactive things, especially
Right.
on the roller coaster. little more easy to tell on when monsters chasing you and you can see rocks
Mhm.
that you can duck versus rocks you can jump. But and then one last thing visually, I lost my train of thought.
We were talking about
Gameplay,
and
yeah.
difficulty.
It was the little boss fight with Jiminy Cricket outside of Stromboli's when the moths are attacking you. On easy, it's just the moths, but on hard or on medium or regular, there's like other insects that come and attack you, so it makes that little challenge quite a bit more challenging.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I guess the biggest thing for me with the difficulty is the first level. If you play it on easy, you can beat the first level in like less than 10 seconds.
Yeah, you literally just
you,
walk
like,
end to end twice. Yeah.
Right, it's like super quick. Whereas if you go normal or hard, you gotta like there's like all these intertwining exits and entrances. There's stuff you can collect, and it's like way more elaborate. And so honestly, I just kind of like that because the first level's fine, but I like to feel like the game is continuing to move on. But when you spend a decent amount of time playing the first level, it's kind of like I don't know. And so I like that about it, that you just kind of move on a little bit quicker. So I like that. But yeah, I played through on easy as well. If you're looking to check this game out, I would suggest playing through it on easy, just because you can see a bit more of the game in a quicker amount of time. Honestly, you could probably beat this game in 30, 40 minutes on easy, depending. And so I've played it on some of the higher difficulties, and it's not impossible. I wouldn't say it's up there with Lion King and stuff, but it definitely gets more challenging, the higher difficulty you go. There is definitely some areas in this game where even on easy, the difficulty totally ramps up. And I know we've already mentioned it, and we're supposed to talk about it later, but the first obvious spike in difficulty, as we mentioned, is the roller coaster level on Pleasure Island. Because I was playing through it on easy the other day, and I'm just flying through it. Jeph, I'm sure you were too.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you get to that point, and it's just a big brick wall of difficulty, and you're just like, all right, well, now I've died a bajillion times. It's a little out of place, because you can really fly through the first couple levels, and then all of a sudden you get to that, and it's just...
It fits interestingly well with your Blockbuster Brutal rating, so it definitely... is almost like, you don't want people to beat this when they rent it, so make this third level hard. And that's almost exactly what they did.
Totally.
Yeah. So other than the platforming and these kind of like speedy raft and roller coaster, there's a couple other gameplay elements. We talked a little bit about Jiminy Cricket being this little, I would kind of consider it a little boss fight. Strangely, because it's just a single frame, you're on the top of a lantern, a lamppost. I'm kind of sad that they didn't bring him back to do a couple other ones or expand on playing as him. But
I was has
the one level.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's that. Not much to it. He's got a little umbrella attack, and it's pretty similar to Pinocchio as far as control.
Right.
But then the other main gameplay element would be the kind of
puppet
Simon show. The Simon Says puppet show.
Yep.
Do you want to discuss that?
Yeah, so basically, depending on which version you play on which console, there's different commands that you have to repeat back after the puppet does it. I believe there's 3 different segments in it. Just like in the movie, there's different, puppets, and the further you get, the more difficult it becomes. And so you have like 5 maybe different movements you can do.
Movements,
2 hands, 2 feet, and then a spin move. And so they'll do 1, you repeat it back. They'll do 2 movements, you repeat it back. They do 3. And so easy, it's not bad. It's pretty manageable. I do remember playing this in the higher difficulties, and it does get much more challenging.
Okay. I figured as
but
much.
It's a cool little, like, hey, let's take a break and let's do something a little different. And so I'm a fan of it. The one thing I didn't like is when I was playing through this on the Genesis, you get to that point and it's like, well, what are they going to do here? Because the Super Nintendo has 4 buttons, so it works really well. You've got Y and X for your hands and B and A for your feet, and then you just press up to spin. And I don't remember exactly how it was all signed, but basically I think the hands you had to press up, and then there was 2 different button options, and it was they were trying to make it work because you only had 3 buttons besides the D-pad, and it was I just felt like it was way more challenging trying to remember it. And I'm sure if I'd grown up playing it on that version, it probably would be a little more familiar to me, but definitely kind of a downside if you ask me. So
agreed.
I wonder how the Game Boy version is too. That one that's probably even harder.
I wonder if they included it, or if they just dumbed it down to just the 2 buttons and the up arrow.
Maybe, yeah. So I'm not sure, but overall, this part didn't really bother me. I think I remember it being kind of challenging as a kid, but I probably wasn't playing it on easy when I did it.
Yeah, I struggled initially figuring out what it wanted me to do. It gives you a tutorial, like it shows the controller on screen and shows the corresponding buttons, and I think I just sort of wasn't paying close enough attention to exactly what was what, and was just I kept hitting the wrong button. But I mean, it was pretty forgiving, and then I figured it out, and it was easy, so not too
nice. Bad. Okay, yeah. So that is another mechanic. Other than that, I'm trying to think if there's any other.
Not really. The only other thing is like the kind of go around. Oh yeah, I guess underwater there's kind of like a gravity shift.
We'll hit all that.
Yeah.
We'll hit all that.
Okay.
We can save that.
All right.
Sorry, was there another thing you were going to mention?
I was going to say when you're trying to escape from Monstro, you go around breaking boxes and collecting wood, and then starting a little fire.
Right.
So it's a little more because there's not really any collecting of anything in any other levels. So not a whole lot to it. It's very simplistic. But
yeah. All right. Well, before we kind of briefly hit the levels, real quick, we'll hit on the story. It's worth noting that this is pretty much following the movie almost to a T. This isn't like a side story going on within the movie or a sequel or anything. This is, pretty much word for word the movie. The cutscenes, we got to talk about those. Basically, they showed the cutscenes and the story all based around it being inside of a book, which is, it works because the game opens with it being in a book, just like the movie does. Yeah. And so having it all written out makes sense. Not my favorite way of like, showing it. Just kind of these like black and white photos more or less.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I don't know. What did you think about them?
Yeah, it was okay. Like I liked that it was in the book, and that that obviously is a tie-in to the movie, and that the entire movie is supposedly we're looking at it taking place inside the book. So that's cool. But yeah, I agree that the black and white pictures that accompany them on the pages of the book, super low resolution and digitally or pixely, which is like not that great. I would have liked to have seen kind of larger images, higher quality. Similar to what we saw in Lilo and Stitch last week, or last episode. But, the Genesis notoriously can't display that many colors, and I think they would have had issues with that, and that may be part of why they didn't do it. I'm not sure, but...
Another thing that's interesting with these is the Super Nintendo version, it's completely silent. Did you notice that?
Oh,
there's no music, nothing, except for I think maybe the final story part has when you wish upon a star. Yeah, it does. Okay, which is weird. But then on the Genesis and the Game Boy version, there's music playing over all of them, and so for some reason not on the Super Nintendo one. I don't know if that's the way it was intended or what, but it's kind of weird, and it's just complete silence, and it kind of that bothered me, but.
Yeah,
thought that was strange.
Odd choice. I wonder why that happened. Huh.
Yeah, because literally, like everything else about this game is superior in this version. But then there's like a little stuff like that where I'm like, I don't know what's going on there. But all right. So I think that kind of covers the story. Not a whole lot to it.
It's not a whole lot.
Pretty true to
a bad
the
boy.
Source.
He lies. He runs away. He gets eaten by a whale.
Yeah. Yep. And so so real quickly, we'll just kind of go through these levels. We've already hit on most of them, but excuse me, we'll just kind of briefly. There are 10 levels total. First level is titled "An Actor's Life for Me," and you're Pinocchio heading off to become an actor. He's supposed to be going to school, right? And
right.
Then,
and
that's
then he's
right.
Distracted by Falfellow or whatever. Yeah.
Right. And so at the very end of the level, homegirl fairy shows up and she's like, "Oh, if you collect these 3 things, I'll turn you into a real boy." Which
it's like the Triforce. It's like wisdom, courage.
Right. I don't remember that in the movie.
Yeah.
But and then all of a sudden Pinocchio is like, "Cool," and then all of a sudden the fox dude shows up and is like, "Hey, come with me." And then Pinocchio's like, "Right on, man." And so that level is all basic platforming. You go on top of buildings. There's different objects that launch you into the air. There's evil like geese that will try to hurt you, seagulls, mean schoolboys that will attack you.
Those jerks.
Yeah. So it's a pretty chill first level, at least on the easy difficulty. Like I said, the higher difficulties, it's a little more complicated and complex, more of a maze of sorts, I guess, but not a bad first level. So
and then you jump into the second level, which is the aforementioned lampside setting. And that's the Jiminy Cricket level, and you play as Jiminy. You're in this lamppost. It's really large on screen, which looks really nice in my opinion. It large set pieces on the Genesis and Super Nintendo were not super common in my opinion like this, and it maybe that they just always were meant to be at like this zoomed out camera, but this is sort of like you're this tiny little cricket on a giant single screen almost. It still scrolls up, down, and a little bit left and right, but it takes up almost the whole screen lamppost, and it looks really nice. And it's got like a flame candle thing in the middle, and like we said before, the really beautiful background of Stromboli's performance thing, and the multi-scrolling backgrounds and the moon and all that. It looks really nice.
Yeah, by far one of the probably more visually impressive levels.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm totally with what you said earlier. I feel like they kind of had a missed opportunity. They should have done more with Jiminy Cricket.
Yeah.
I think he's just way more like fun character to be than Pinocchio, and he's got a cool attack animation, and he's just a cool dude, man. And I feel like it was kind of a missed opportunity that it literally is just kind of this little stationary battle thing. One interesting thing I thought of, it was years ago, but one of the times when I fired this game up like on an emulator because I was like, oh, I remember this game. I'd get to this level and I could not figure out what to do. And I thought, because he has this ability to jump down and his umbrella opens. So I'm like, oh, there's a level here. Like I need to, go across. Parachute down, and I just kept dying. And I'm like, where am I supposed to go? I do not understand.
It does not explain well.
No, and then that was the thing, is like I feel like they should have explained a little bit, like get rid of the moths so you can watch, and so it was just like, and there's parts like that in this game where I feel like a little explanation would have been better. Be it in the storybooks or throwing up some text before the level starts. And so it was just a little confusing, and then overall just kind of disappointing when it did end. But I'm still glad they added it, because it's nice in a game like this if you can not just be the main character the whole time. Like I said with Lilo and Stitch, I love that you could play as Lilo as well.
Absolutely.
Like I thought that was great. And so variety's good, and I think this level, the character controls well and looks really good. So some missed opportunities there, but still cool nonetheless. I remember I watched this scene online on YouTube, and he actually does like kind of have a little tussle with a moth for a second, but it's like super brief,
like real short.
And then he just like sits down and stuff. But so it was interesting. They sold that brief little thing, and they're like, oh, we can make a level out of this, if you want to call it that. So, but nonetheless, pretty cool level. Then after that is the as we mentioned before, the puppet level, the puppet show, Stromboli's little show, which is a pretty cool little scene. I like that the each time you get new puppets, the backdrop changes.
I was going to comment on that. Yeah, I love that.
I don't know how true they are to what the backdrops were in the movie, but I thought it was interesting when the like the Russian dudes show up.
Mm-hmm.
Their background looks a lot like Agrabah. I don't know.
Oh,
if you know
I
what I'm
wasn't
talking
really
about.
paying that close attention, but yeah, I think it's meant to look like the what is it, Saint? Oh, what's the cathedral in Moscow?
Oh, I know what you're
That
talking
looks like
about.
a cupcake. I think it was meant to look like that, but that look does look very Agrabah like as far as Aladdin goes. So could be
cupcakes. The Kremlin?
Nope, not the Kremlin. It's like Saint Basil's Cathedral or Saint something.
Oh yeah, Saint Basil's Cathedral in Moscow. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes, two different Moscow buildings. Like, come on, guys, you don't need that many like popular buildings. Come on.
But yeah, it looks like cupcakes to me. But yeah, that actually does have a very Middle Eastern look to it. I never really thought of that.
Yeah, which is weird because they're totally like Russian looking dudes, but or something. But anyway, other than that, it's cool
Dutch
when
girls
you
have a windmill, and yeah, it looks fun.
Yeah, it's a nice little change up. I like when you do well, the crowd will throw health or lives at you, and if you do poorly, they throw tomatoes at you and boo at you and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a cool little added feature, I'd say.
Yeah.
So, so that's it for that level, I'd say.
Yep, and then from there you move on to Pleasure Island. So Pleasure Island 1 is that one I was talking about with the balloons, where it's a side scroller. You go all the way to the right, and then you have to kind of ride balloons back to the left. And there's different little boys throwing stuff at you, and Lampwick, I think, is trying to persuade you to do bad things, because that's what he's there for.
He's also throwing freaking dynamite at you.
What a jerk. Oh, you know what they are? I think it's the exploding cigars.
I
think is what they're supposed to be.
Basically dynamite.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's dynamite for your face. Yeah, so there's a little bit of challenge and some, I don't know if you'd call it platforming, but like jumping from balloon to balloon before they pop, and avoiding the enemy characters and getting collectibles and all that good stuff. So,
did you know that depending on what color balloon you have, they have different like tendencies?
Like altitude, yeah, like the blue one goes up and or the green one goes up.
One of them pops, one of them doesn't, one of them I guess deflates.
Oh, okay, didn't know that.
I don't know if that's in every
jumped
difficulty.
From balloon to balloon.
Okay.
Yeah, I did have one pop on me in easy, and then I had
Okay.
one that would like take me higher than the other one. So I didn't really figure out what the pattern was. I just kind of didn't want the balloon to pop, so I would just jump to another one as quickly as I could.
Yeah. That level kind of felt like it was lacking, and obviously we were playing on a lower difficulty, so there's a lot less to do. But
Yeah.
I just kind of got through. I was like, all right, I guess that's it. But it might technically be considered the same level as I've seen certain people list it as Part A and Part B. Because they're kind of both in the same place, and there's not really a cutscene in between them, I don't think.
Right.
So you can go ahead and talk about the next part as well.
So yeah, when you finish it the last balloon you're on takes you up to the top left of the screen and drops you off in the roller coaster, and yeah, you start the one we were talking about earlier. It's pretty fast paced. There's a lot of ducking and jumping. Obviously very similar to, maybe not obviously, but to us very obviously similar to Donkey Kong Country and its minecart levels, especially the second one that's in a theme park.
Yeah.
Where you have to jump between carts, you have to duck stuff. Like, I mean, there's some similarities there. And a lot of the challenge, in my opinion, like we mentioned before, it comes in that how narrow the screen is in the Super Nintendo one. And especially because I played it on easy, and the arrows jump out at you. They're bright red. But like, if you play that on a regular difficulty, you literally would just have to memorize when and where to jump or duck.
Right.
And it moves fast. Like when you're going downhill and going up over, like you have no time to react. It's just like, you need to know at this point is when I'm going to jump. So
yeah, it's pretty poorly designed. I think.
That one was tricky. And there's like parts where it says ring the bell, and I'm wondering if in higher difficulty that does something, but like in the easy difficulty it doesn't seem to affect anything.
Right. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. So other than that, not much to it. Then at the end, there's a little mini boss fight against Lampwick, where he's lighting fireworks off and shooting them at you, and you are avoiding oncoming train cars, and the screen shakes right before they come, so you have like a little tell.
Yeah.
Overall, it's a decent boss fight. It's mostly just last like long enough to avoid Lampwick. So
yeah, it's pretty easy, at least on easy. I don't know how much more difficult it would be on hard, but you kind of
there's more
stay out of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So following that is the level Escape from Pleasure Island, which we briefly mentioned earlier. Kind of feels like a Lion King level, which I totally I agree with and thought of when I was playing it. You got these rocks with little edges on them that you kind of grab hold of, and you're basically trying to get away from those creepy, like, hooded guys from
they look like
Pleasure
executioners.
Yeah, like those guys were so scary back in the day, man.
Yeah.
As a kid, they kind of scared me, but luckily you can attack them with your little spin attack, and they evaporate into thin air for some reason.
Yeah, and if you don't, they in a pretty smooth animation, like pick you up, throw you down, and kick you, and you roll until you fall.
It's pretty great.
Yeah, I like that.
They pretty much manhandle you.
Oh dear.
So I noticed in the later levels, or in the higher difficulties, there's some seagulls as well they've added. But the nice thing about this one is as the whole goal of it is just to move upward. And so I never really was confused on like, where do I go? It's like, just keep going up. Like if you find a ledge, jump up there and keep trying to get to the top. And so I liked that it kind of avoided some confusion. There was a really cool backdrop with the moon that looked really neat. And then once you get to the top, you have a boss fight against. Do you know what this guy's name is called?
I don't know what his name is. I call him the child catcher. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, that guy. So you fight him. He tries to whip you, and you spin him off to the edge. A donkey kicks him in the groin, and then you murder him in cold blood and knock him off the cliff.
Off the cliff and to his doom.
To his doom. And then for some reason, the fairy awards you for the murder, and you get one of the Triforces. Yep, and then you then jump off and are like, yeah, cool, we're going in. He jumps in the water.
Swimming,
right to where I pushed the bad guy into.
One thing I'm noticing here, it's just in the background of this level, and especially in the Genesis one, it starts at twilight, so opposite of the last level that I was just commenting on, where the Genesis one was at night and the Super Nintendo one was at twilight on the roller coaster. So it starts at twilight on the Genesis one, and then as you get higher and higher in the level, it eventually, the background turns into a black starry sky on both of them. Which I didn't notice while playing it, but like while scrolling through this YouTube video right now, it's pretty cool. That's a great effect.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah. And so when you do that boss battle, you're at the very top of the rocks, and you're in the starry night. So
nice.
It's cool. It's a cool effect to kind of
that is cool.
Portray time passing.
Yeah.
So you jump off that cliff and into the water, and you do a little underwater thing, which is. This part is based on a level or a sequence in the movie. In the movie, Pinocchio's made of wood and is trying to float away, so Jiminy helps him tie a rock to his tail because he's developed a tail because he was drinking and smoking. So he has donkey ears and a tail in this. And this one, they added a gameplay mechanic. I guess this is another level where you collect things. You collect clams to essentially give you the weight to be at the bottom of the screen. Otherwise, over time, they slip out or swim away and you float. But rather than float, you just end up, the gravity switches and you up is down or down is up or whatever.
Dude, I could not figure out what those clams were for.
Yeah,
that totally makes sense though.
5 of them weights you down, and then after a certain amount of time, one of them swims away, and after you're down to like one, your gravity switches again. But there's like certain elements that are like the barrel can. I keep everything I refer to as rare. I love rare. The barrel cannons in Donkey Kong Country. So there's these little like anemone looking things that you get sucked into, and then you like push A and you shoot from 1 to 1 up and down, and it's a pretty straightforward level as far as just get from the left to the right side. Again just on easy, so I'm sure there's a little more elements to it in the higher difficulties. But
yeah, and I mean, as far as underwater levels go, it could be a lot worse. And
yeah,
they
that's
at
true.
least tried to kind of create some physics
something
variations
based
to
on
make
what
it
happens in the movie. Yeah.
right,
Rather
and
than
just
like
to change
a
it up.
fake, yeah, like they could have added a fake swimming mechanic that just wouldn't really have fit what happened. So I'm glad they went this route. The gravity mechanic works.
Yeah,
Something that Nintendo does in the Super Mario series, where you kind of go from top to bottom. I'm sure there's plenty of other games that do it, and it's done well, I think. So
yeah.
background is. This is where I was thinking it doesn't quite look like the movie. I feel like the movie was a little more detailed. This one's a little dark and just has a couple pieces of seaweed, not a lot of color. But yeah, that's not much to it. You get to the end,
Yeah.
and then do you want to jump into?
Yes, and then you get to the level titled Fish, which is a very appropriate name for it.
What do you do in that level? I wonder.
So what you're doing is basically you find Monstro, and this is the scene in the movie where he's trying to eat you, and so basically he's like doing this like super strong inhale thing, and so in the movie, Pinocchio is swimming, trying to get away from Monstro, and so in this level there's all these fish that are basically moving backwards, and you swim to them and grab onto them and kind of use them to propel you forward.
Yeah.
And it's a really cool kind of, even if it's not like the most like earth-shattering gameplay, it's just like a really cool visual thing to look at, because you have these fish on the same axis as Pinocchio that you can grab hold, and then there's like fish in the background that are pretty much just repeating, so it makes it look like you're surrounded.
Like
and so there's normal right, and so there's normal fish, and then there's these like slightly different colored fish that if you grab hold of them, they like launch forward and also spit out a item that you can use. There's also some mean fish that will hurt you,
and send you backwards towards the whale.
Backward. And so if you take too long, you'll get eaten and you'll have to start over. Even at one point, the little cat guy swims by.
I don't remember that, but
yeah, I don't know if they were in the water at this point or if that they just put that in there to be funny.
Yeah, I don't feel like that was in the movie. I feel like we kind of just leave them behind and they're insignificant for the rest of the movie.
Yeah. And then eventually you get kind of toward the end and it gets a little more intense, but then basically all of a sudden the current just speeds up so fast that you just fall backward.
Yeah.
And I got so mad, dude, because I thought I lost. And
Same.
I was
like, dude, no. And then
and you find out it's intentional that you can't really get away. And so, there's turtles too, slow turtles.
Yeah.
I never grabbed onto them. I always assumed that they were not what you want, and so I left them alone. But it's a cool level. I like it. It changes it up. It's visually really cool to look at, and really fits with the movie. So I thought that was a pretty brilliant idea.
Yeah. One real quick visual difference. The Genesis one has a black background, it looks like, and then the Super Nintendo has more of a blue one, which is interesting because I feel like I can't tell which one's better because it's like each one has different problems, like as far as the contrast. Like I feel like on the Super Nintendo one, the fish that you can grab stand out a little more.
Right.
Just in my opinion, looking at it. So I don't know if that, and it also looks maybe more like the ocean or like a school of fish surrounding you, but just an odd choice that those would be different. Not really sure why.
Cool.
Yeah.
So then after that, you get swallowed up.
Yeah, and you end up inside Monstro the whale, just like in the movie. You find your father, Geppetto, and he sends you on a quest to go find some wood so you can build a fire, I guess. I didn't actually read the exposition, but
I didn't either. Yeah, that's
essentially you go through this giant ship. It's like pirate ship inside the whale. Some vertical platforming, a little bit of horizontal platforming, and you just kind of break apart these crates and collect pieces of wood. At some point, you find a lantern, and when you touch it, it falls and starts a fire. And then you go back to Geppetto, and at that point, you guys get on your raft. As far as within the level, from top to bottom, lots of ship decks, and then the very bottom, there's some platforming of floating crates, floating barrels, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah.
There's some spiky areas that you can't land on, like broken wood or something.
Those were like hard to tell.
Yeah,
everything
really
in this
were.
level is spiky, so I'm like, what can I touch?
Right.
And what can I not touch?
Stuff you
that
can jump
kinda
through, it doesn't hurt
frustrated me.
you. Yeah. And then it's like a lot of the vertical pillars, you have to find ways to get up and around because you can't walk past them, but other ones that look like you can't walk past them, you can. So
Yeah.
it's a little visually not very telling, I guess is the right way to put it. Like, doesn't telegraph the best way, but I mean, it wasn't super hard. I'm sure there must be added difficulty on the harder difficulties, but as would imply. But I'm sure there must be other enemies or objectives or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Another issue I had, I got to the bottom of the level where the raft is,
Yeah.
and Geppetto wasn't there yet. I guess I needed to collect more wood. I don't know if or if I had, maybe I hadn't started the fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just like not a lot of direction. Like, okay, obviously I have a counter at the top with wood, so I know I'm collecting that. But there wasn't like a find the lamp or whatever.
Right, or you have enough now, go back. Like, yeah, it was just
right.
I had
and
30
so
at one point. I was like, do I have enough?
Yeah, and then I went back down and I was like, well, there's a raft down here, but he's not there. And then I went back down and after you hit 25, the wood counter starts flashing.
Oh,
so I guess that's supposed to tell you that you're done. I just noticed that.
Interesting. Didn't notice that.
But just still not really well communicated a little.
No.
But and so another interesting thing with this, kind of connecting to the next level, is if you die in the next level, it takes you back to this part of the level.
Yeah, that's some crap.
And your wood indicator is at 0, but if you just go to the raft, you can just keep going.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whose idea was this? This is terrible.
Yeah.
Just start me on the next level, man.
Yeah. I thought that was weird.
So
And it's
weird.
like, from a design standpoint, I can see what they were trying to do, but yeah, it was completely unnecessary in a video game.
Yeah.
I'm glad you didn't have to recollect all the wood again.
Yeah, I thought for a minute, I'm like, you better not
did
make
too.
me.
Yeah.
I did like that once you start the fire that you can hear Monstro kind of start like having to sneeze. Wheezing. I thought that was, and it like shakes the camera and stuff. So
I like that.
I thought that was a nice touch. I was looking for more lanterns. I thought maybe there was more I needed to trigger it.
Or I thought I needed to put my wood on the fire.
Right.
So I kept burning myself and getting knocked back.
Nice.
Yeah.
Just a little better communication would have been nice, but
Totally.
whatever. Anything else on Inside Monstro?
Don't think so. I think we can escape.
All right. So after you make your way down to the bottom left, you find good old Geppetto, and you get on the raft, and he sneezes you out, which takes you to the final level, which is Escape from Monstro. And so you're outside. You guys are on your raft, and there's these really convenient placed rocks that you either have to duck under or jump over. Which totally gives off a Lion King just can't wait to be king vibe, where you're having to jump over things, and it at first it's not terribly hard, but then as you go along, those jumping segments become quicker, and it does become more difficult. But intertwined within those are moments where Monstro kind of sneaks up on you, he gains on you, and so you kind of have to keep your raft to the left, and he's kind of standing there off camera a little bit. But it's like a really cool effect where you can kind of see his teeth, and he opens his mouth, and this is kind of cool. It's a neat little effect. Looked way better on the Super Nintendo than the Genesis. I was looking at that, and I'm like, it doesn't look as good. The background of this level has beautiful clouds in the Super Nintendo version, and then the Genesis version is like
this ugly
like teal.
Yeah.
Just like plain
flat.
teal.
Yeah. And then the Super Nintendo has 2 scrolling backgrounds with like further back rocks and stuff that scroll, whereas the Genesis one is just a solid one. It just does not look good on the Genesis one.
So weird. Normally it's kind of neck and neck with these games, but this one, I feel like there's a clear winner. Don't combine those words together. And so, I was just gonna say, did you notice what Geppetto does when he jumps? You see what he looks like?
Yeah.
He has this like really stupid look on his face, and he like goes all stretchy. It's so weird.
Yeah.
Like, what are you
It's
doing,
a
man?
frog, and he like kind of has his legs offset and his knees going
Yeah.
opposite direction. He looks kind of silly.
Dude, this level is long.
Yeah, it is. It really
it's
is.
not quick. Even on easy, it's still a pretty long level.
Mhm.
If you duck when you're supposed to jump, you're pretty much immediately dead.
Yeah, there's no saving that.
I noticed with the jump, you can land on top of the rocks and kind of
Yeah.
roll off.
Yep.
And so you can jump a little bit earlier and be all right, which was nice. I'm glad they at least did that.
Yeah.
But I noticed if you kind of back up, because you can go left or right in this level,
Mhm.
with the rock levels parts, especially as it gets quicker, if you just kind of
Stay to the right side of the screen.
right,
You can see what's coming.
You have a
there.
little more time, and
Yeah.
I started doing that. But dude, I spent a lot of time on this. I don't know about you.
Oh, it took me so long. Yeah, almost as long
Yeah,
as the
even
roller
on
coaster.
easy,
Yeah.
which is crazy. Like, yeah, the arrows are nice, but it still was very challenging, and so.
Mhm.
Which it's the final boss level, so I guess I can understand that. But,
Yeah.
and then the interesting thing, you crash into the shore at the end,
Mhm.
and the game actually allows you to decide to go left or right, and you can
Yeah.
either save Geppetto, or I don't know what happens if you go left. I assume you just die and start over, but it's kind of the last Triforce you need is by saving him, I guess. And so you run to the right, you save him, and then and that's the end of the game.
Yep. That's it. You get a little cutscene with the blue fairy giving you or making you a boy or something, but yeah, that's it. And then there's a little bit of exposition.
You turn into Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
That's right. And Geppetto turns into Drew Carey.
No.
And then the credits roll, and I'm just looking at the credits right now. I think Pinocchio's still wooden in the credits. Or
Really? Oh,
is he?
they didn't
No,
want
I think it's just really hard to tell. I was thinking the
to. His
legs
nose
look,
looks different.
yeah, the
but
nose
his legs
looks
look
human, but the legs
his
look,
legs look square.
yeah, they've got that vertical line down them. Oh well. Really random thing about the credits, and it's like literally the first 3 or 4 names. The credits are almost identical except for the first 4 names are in a different order for like no reason at all.
Huh.
No idea why. It's just like a really small thing, but there
Right.
was an additional artist on the Super Nintendo version and an additional like QA person. So
Wow.
yeah, I have no
Surprised
idea
you
why.
noticed that stuff.
I
didn't even.
was looking for it.
Huh.
So yeah, that's pretty much it. It's an interesting game, and it sticks to
Yeah.
the movie, and I liked it.
So, final thoughts. What do you think, Jeph?
I would recommend this to anyone who likes Disney games, especially the old 2D platformers. It ranks up there with the Lion Kings and the Aladdins, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful, sounds good, plays well. Doesn't quite have as much, without being able to throw apples and stuff like that. Like not as much gameplay total, but still not bad by any means. What about you?
Yeah. I think it's definitely underrated. I don't think it gets enough. I don't think enough people talk about it. I don't know if that's because it was just so late in the console's life cycle that it just didn't really.
That, and it's an old IP that was like 56 years old.
Yeah, that's
It's
true.
a
That's
weird
a good point.
choice. Yeah.
I'm glad they did it. I think
Yep.
that it totally kind of captures the mood and the vibe of the movie, and so I think it's super sticks true to the movie, and I appreciate that they didn't go all weird and like go off base with it all, and so overall it's got some good variety. So you're not just Pinocchio from start to finish running left to right. They did some things to try to change it up. If I were you, I would definitely pick up the Super Nintendo version over the Genesis version. Unless you're like a diehard Genesis guy, I would still check it out. But yeah, so overall, 2 thumbs up. I love this game. It'll always have a special place in my heart. And so yeah, I'm glad we were able to do it. Jeph, I'm glad you liked it. And yeah, it's a fun one. So I'm happy that we got to cover it.
Same.
Awesome. All right. Well, guys, thanks so much for joining us this week. Please give us a follow on our Twitter, which is at mouse_bytes on Twitter, and that's BYTES. We haven't been updating it a ton, but I'm planning to fix that once we get our show stuff all figured out. We'll be back, and we'll be really obnoxious and trying to just build this fan base a little more. Yes, next week, and by next week I mean next episode, we are going to be covering a game for the Nintendo 64. Jeph, would you like to tell the listeners what game we're going to be covering?
Yes, and this one is very special to me as it is one of my favorite Disney video games, and it is called Mickey Speedway USA.
Woo! Yes,
Yeah.
Normally I like to save our most favorite games for like later on in seasons, and but I figured we've done so many platformers and I've picked like the last two games, and so I figured, Jeph, it's your turn, and I didn't give you a lot to work with, but I think you made a good choice. This will be a good one, and we both are huge fans of Rare, and so it's about time we get to cover a Rare game on here, and it should be fun. Maybe we'll look into having like a guest host on. We haven't done that yet here.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have anyone in mind. We can talk about it, but we'll see. We'll start trying to do some more fun stuff like that, just so you guys don't have to listen to me and Jeph, jabber on every episode. We'll try to change it up. So look forward to that. We'll be back next episode to talk about that. Until then, guys, play some Disney games, watch some Disney movies, and have a great day. See ya.
Also, stay in school and don't lie. See ya.
That's right.
Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, check out some of our other videos, and visit thenintendovillage.com, your home for everything Nintendo.